UBS agrees to take over crisis-hit rival Credit Suisse for $3.2 billion in a historic deal, with Swiss regulators pledging up to $108 billion in liquidity assistance. UBS Group CEO Ralph Hamers will head the combined entity, while the shareholders of Credit Suisse will take a haircut of over 50%, with the deal valued at about 0.76 Swiss francs a share. In another bid to avert a contagion, the Fed, the Bank of England and the central banks of Canada, Japan and Switzerland undertake coordinated action to improve liquidity in global financial markets. The new daily US dollar liquidity swap line arrangement will run from today. Dow futures trade higher. Asian markets open largely lower after UBS agrees to buy Credit Suisse for $3.2 billion. The SGX Nifty is also indicating a lower start for the Indian market. Fears of a fast-spreading banking crisis see crude prices slip up to 15-month low at about $73 a barrel on Friday. The dollar too slips while gold surges as investors seek safety in precious metals. The NCLT approved the merger of HDFC into HDFC Bank in what will be the biggest ever amalgamation in Indian corporate history. Remember, the merger has already been approved by exchanges. Okay, all right. Those are the top headlines. Good morning in the Mumbai News Center. I'm Sonal Bhutra and you're watching Power Breakfast. It's a fresh new week and we have a lot to catch up on as far as the global markets are concerned as well, and the big buyout that has happened from UBS for Credit Suisse as well. But first up, as always, let's take a look at what the Asian markets are doing. They're largely lower. The weak handover that they got from Wall Street. Yes, Dow futures are up 100 points, but in Friday's trading session, we did see some pressure coming in there because of the banking crisis that we've been talking globally. The Taiwanese index is down 0.2% as we speak. Hang Seng is down 1.3%. So that's a big cut there, and that's the weakest in the Asian screen right now. Nikkei is down around 0.7%. So it's red across the Asian screen as we speak. And SGX Nifty, as a result of which, is indicating that the start for our own markets, well, that could be in the red by around 100 points. So that's a gap down opening that SGX Nifty is indicating at that 17,063 mark right now. With that, let's move on and talk about the big global story this morning. UBS has agreed to buy embattled rival Credit Suisse for about $3.2 billion and will assume up to $5.4 billion in losses in a deal backed by a massive Swiss guarantee. The takeover is expected to close by the end of this year. CNBC's Will Couliris gets us the latest. And in a coordinated global response, the US Federal Reserve said it had joined hands with the central banks in Canada, England, Japan, the European Union and Switzerland to enhance market liquidity. The US Federal Reserve has offered daily currency swaps to ensure other central banks would have the dollars needed to operate. The Fed in a statement said, and I quote, "The daily swaps beginning today and extending at least till the end of April will serve as an important liquidity backstop to ease strains in global funding markets, thereby helping to mitigate effects of such strains on the supply of credit to households and businesses." End of quote. And the stocks in the European markets clocked their worst week for the year, with banks leading the losses as expected, followed by the financial services. The Pan-European Stock 600 index closed 1.26% lower, losing 3.9% last week, their worst performance since September 2022. Meanwhile, a look at the broader indices. The French CAC was down over 100 points, the German DAX sliding close to 200 points, and the British FTSE closing with losses of 1%. And in the US markets now, finally, we get to those cues there, because the Wall Street ended Friday's session lower. The Dow Jones closed with a cut of 384 points. The S&P 500 finished 1.1% lower, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite fell by 0.74%. All three major indices ended the week mixed, with the Nasdaq ending much higher at 4.4% as investors now bet on tech stocks. Okay, that's all about the global markets and the major cues that we saw globally over the weekend and overnight as well. We'll slip into a short break now, and up next we'll tell you how these global cues will impact our own markets. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Still tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC-TV18. This is our Power Prep segment now, and our research team is joining us to tell us how the trade setup looks like today, the stocks that are likely to be in the news, and the action from the F&O space as well. Hey guys, a very good morning to all of you. Sonia, let me come across to you first up. A lot of cues to reckon with overnight.
Oh, absolutely. And the big global headline, right? After years of falling stock prices, the Swiss regulator has finally decided that Credit Suisse cannot perhaps remain as a standalone bank. And now UBS has decided to buy Credit Suisse for $3.2 billion in order to stem the crisis there. The Swiss regulators, in addition, will also provide $108 billion of liquidity assurance. Now, for now, of course, the Dow futures are in the green, but there are still lingering concerns about what's happening, both with respect to the US as well as the European banks. And that's why you saw a big fall in the US markets on Friday. And that's perhaps the reason our own markets as well could be under pressure. There is a pullback that the street is expecting, but that could be feeble given the kind of concerns that we have. Now, First Republic Bank in the US, the shares were down 33% despite a $30 billion support. The shares of First Republic Bank are down 80% in the last 10 days. Also, in our own markets, it's been 7 straight days of FI selling. FI sold almost 9,030 crores in the last 7 days. Now, remember, the Nifty has lost almost 4.5% just in the last 1 month. And the next level to watch on the downside, if the selling pressure resumes, is the September 2022 low of 16,818. All eyes will also be on the FOMC policy that comes out on the 21st and 22nd of March. Of course, there's an expectation of a 25 basis points rate hike, but I'll be watching out for any cues from the US Fed on how they plan to stem the crisis in the banking sector that we've seen. So, that will perhaps be paramount in terms of an agenda for the US FOMC. Apart from that, for our own markets this morning, it could be very volatile as news flow evolves with respect to what's happening with Credit Suisse. Back to you.
Yes, that's the big story that we are tracking. Thank you, Sonia, for all those cues. But a lot of stocks that will be in focus as well. Abhishek has that list.
Well, to begin with, the NCLT has approved HDFC Bank HDFC Limited merger. RBI, on the other hand, has fined rupees 5 lakh to HDFC Limited for non-compliance with NHB or National Housing Bank norms. So, CADFIN has appointed Mr. Suresh Iyer as MD and CEO. Remember that Mr. Suresh Iyer had joined Bandhan on account of the merger of Groove with Bandhan and was serving as the housing finance head over there. Sun Pharma, the Concert Pharma announces data from its phase 3 clinical trial of Thrive AA2. Data shows that there is scalp hair regrowth in one of the areas. So CMAC Limited, they are holding a board meet on 22nd of March to consider a merger or demerger of the company and HAL Offshore Limited, the unlisted holding company of the company. So SJVN, they have got a letter of approval from Maharashtra government for 200 megawatt of solar power projects to be set up in the state of Maharashtra. Cochin Shipyard, they have bagged order worth rupees 550 crore for 2 vessels. RVNL, they have emerged as the lowest bidder for new BG railway line of HORC project. This is worth about 1,089 crore. And Torrent Pharma, they have got a US FDA pre-approval inspection of oral oncology manufacturing facility that they have in Gujarat. Back to you.
Okay, all right. Those are all the stocks in focus. Thanks for that, Abhishek. In fact, the Adani Group will also be in focus. They have suspended work on their 34,900 crore rupee petrochemical project in Gujarat. This is according to a PTI report quoting sources. The company has reportedly also suspended plans to raise 14,000 crore rupees for the project. Responding to a CNBC-TV18 query, an Adani spokesperson also said that Adani Enterprises would be evaluating status of growth projects in primary industry vertical over coming months. The move comes as the group looks to re-evaluate projects based on cash flow and availability of finance in the fallout of Hindenburg's short seller report. Well, that's all about the stocks and news. Nigel is joining in with all the cues from the F&O space this morning. Hey, Nigel.
Well, morning, Sonal. The last couple of days, the Nifty went around 16,850, 16,950 and bounced from there. So the question is, in the near term, the bulls would like to know that they've made a bit of a near-term bottom. Let's see whether or not that plays out. But the FIs, well, we had a relief rally on Friday, but they continue shorting the index. They added more than 6,000 short contracts. The short positioning, it's the highest that I've ever seen. Added around 90% odd. It's when the pandemic broke out, at that point of time as well, it had gone for a couple of sessions to around the 90%, so they net short on the index. But the options data is a little bit encouraging. They bought closer around 4 calls for every 1 put. And the bigger positive for me is that they wrote more puts than calls. So they wrote closer around 3 puts for every one call that they wrote. And just take a look at that. Close to around 1.2 lakh puts were written. What were they writing? It appears the 17,100 put as well as the 17,000 put. Both of them saw a high amount of open interest. However, on the upside, you're likely to be seeing some selling pressure because the 17,200 put premiums around 85 rupees out there. In all probability, there is writing out there, which brings us to the levels. Well, on the upside, 17,280 around 17,300, going by the action we saw at around the 17,200 call. While on the downside, the recent lows should support to some extent. The SGX Nifty suggesting a bit of a pullback, close to around 80-90 points the last time I checked. But maybe at some point of time, we could see the shorts getting squeezed. So was that a flash in the pan that we saw on Friday? Well, time will tell. But for today, I think maybe risk reward, if you get a 100-point downtick, could be in favor of the bulls.
Okay, all right. Thank you guys for joining us and telling us what to look out for in the trading session today. It is going to be an important one. Well, that's the Power Prep segment. With that, we'll slip into a short break. We'll get you all the cues from the commodities market after this short break, so stay tuned for that. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC-TV18. It's time to talk commodities now. A lot of action in that space. Manisha Gupta is joining us with that update. Hey, Manisha, good morning. A lot of action in gold.
Oh, yes, and we're trading at an 11-month highs in the international markets, all-time highs in the Indian markets as well. We've seen 5.5% of gain in the gold prices in the previous week, which actually has been the best gain in the last 4.5 months. Good going for metals as well, where you have silver trading at a Feb 2022 highs. Even copper prices are trading positive, reacting to the Chinese stimulus measures. The emergency liquidity measures that we've seen come in from the US Fed and other central banks also seem to be supporting the markets at this point in time. And the fact that the US dollar has declined and now there is just about 80% chance of a 25 basis point rate hike seems to be supporting the precious metal prices. Even the crude oil prices, which did see decline of nearly 10 to 12% in the previous week, have seen some support right now. And that is because the OPEC and Iraq is known to discuss need for price stability, and anything that comes out of that could be supportive, and markets already taking that in.
Okay, all right. So commodity markets in action as well. Manisha, thank you so much for that update. With that, we'll take your leave in this edition of Power Breakfast with the news that the SGX Nifty is indicating that the start for our own markets could be in the red. A 90-point downtick, 80-point downtick is what it is indicating has recovered from the lows of the day. Stay tuned. Bazaar Morning Call comes up next with all the market action.